And let me begin first, please, by introducing myself, making a few announcements before I invite our distinguished lecturer to share some very, very exciting information with you. My name is Lavooy. I am your Southeastern Vice President for Psych-Hi. Without further ado, let me introduce our distinguished lecturer, Paul, known as, goes by Skip. That's how I do it. Well, usually that's what I call him. Hall Skip Beck. He received his PhD from the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, 1983, and he specialized in social psychology. He accepted a position in the psychology department of Appalachian State University in 1984, and he's still happily at the university. For the past decade, most of Dr. Beck's research has focused upon improving student retention. His other main area of inquiry is human-computer interaction, specifically the use of automated devices to reduce, I can't even read this here, fratricide in the military. The search for little Albert began as a lark with his undergraduates, I understand many undergraduates, but it became a passion. And it took Dr. Beck and his students on a historical journey to the John B. Watson Infant Laboratory. And so today he is going to share with us some of those adventures in that journey. And for those of us who have been asking that burning question, whatever happened to little Albert? Well, we have some answers for you today. So, welcome, Dr. Beck.
Maria, thank you very much, and a special thanks to Psych-Hi for inviting me to talk about Watson and Rayner and my little friend. The Psych-Hi address provides, I believe, the perfect podium from which to tell you about the adventures of my students and my colleagues and myself, and those things we shared in terms of this search. Over a 7-year period, the students in my laboratory volunteered literally thousands of hours in this endeavor. Most of those people, I might mention, were Psych-Hi members, and without them, we would not have found many of the fascinating things we did regarding the infant studies, and we certainly would not have been able to discover the individual who we believe to be little Albert. So this is a chance to say thank you to all those people in my lab over the years, because as Jerry Garcia said, it's been a long, strange trip, but it has been mostly a very wonderful kind of trip. Our story begins in 2001. Some students came by my office and asked if I would lead them on a search to find little Albert. My first inclination was to say no to such an obviously unpractical request. I mean, after all, how many babies that have been missing for the greater part of a century are ever located? Also, I was aware that there had been many diligent investigators who had searched for Albert, and yet at the time we began our investigation, there was not one single verifiable fact about him that had been uncovered since the study had been performed. Nevertheless, although I didn't really believe that we would find Watson's famous participant, I do believe in my heart that when you pursue a research dream, that you often find much more than you were ever looking for. And so we began the improbable journey to John B. Watson's infant laboratory. As most of you all know, in the winter of 1919-1920, John Broadus Watson and Rosalie Alberta Rayner attempted to condition a baby who they called Albert B. to fear a white laboratory rat. Later, they contended that the child's fear generalized to other furry objects, such as a dog, a bunny, a woman's fur coat, and a Santa mask. Yes, Albert was even afraid of Santa. Now, people may debate whether Watson deserves to be psychology's greatest rogue. There's probably a number of people who would contend for that position. But you certainly cannot doubt that Watson had a flair for the stage. He certainly knew how to get more out of his data than most anyone I ever met. Well, that's a talent we got to develop. Is that not true, Tom? All right. Now, our strategy was the essence of simplicity. First of all, we would find out as much about Albert as we could and the baby studies. And then we would find an individual who matched those attributes. So the place to start was Watson's own writings. And so that's what we did. Now, I'm not going to ask you all to memorize everything that we know about Albert in the infant studies. That would certainly be a cruel penalty. But there are a few things I would like to highlight, and I want you to keep in your mind for this talk. We're eventually going to come back to all these attributes, but I want you to recall a few of them because they are especially important. First of all, we know that Albert's mother worked in the Harriet Lane home. The Harriet Lane home was a pediatric facility on the Johns Hopkins campus. And it was right beside Watson's laboratory in the Phipps Clinic. So there was a convenience of Albert to Watson for testing. We also know that Albert's mother made at least part of her income as a wet nurse. In other words, she sold her breast milk to support herself and her child. A third thing that you should recall is that Albert was first tested at 8 months and 26 days of age. Now, Watson is very specific about the tests that he ran and Albert's age at each day. But he does not tell us the date of the calendar, unfortunately. Well, maybe fortunately, because probably if he did, I wouldn't be able to be talking to you today, because somebody would have probably found Albert around 1924. But in fact, they didn't, so I get to come here because there was a bit of a puzzle around all of this. Now, after we, in fact, went through this material, and we found these facts, it became clear to me that they would not lead us to Albert. After all, this information had been available to many psychologists across the decades, and yet they had not led anyone to Watson's famous participant. So we needed to find out additional information. Discoveries had to be made about the baby studies.